Hello everyone, welcome to another Shmup topic video. Today's subject is something that I hope will be very entertaining and useful if I'm able to articulate it well, which is a concept that's been floating in the back of my mind for quite a long time now. I'd say ever since I wrote the Shmup review issue, which was an article about all the problems and misconceptions I've seen in Shmup reviews over the years, especially from mainstream outlets or people who don't necessarily play Shmups and kind of just casually credit feed their way through. The one complaint that has always stuck out to me and been a thorn in my side is the idea that shmups are a lesser genre, that they aren't as good as something like RPGs or platformers or walking simulators, whatever it is, because these games have game length. They last for 8 to 12 to 16 hours, whatever it is. Now hundreds of hours apparently with some of these games, whereas shmups are meant to be played typically in one sitting from 30 to 45 minutes. And so because of this, shmups are a more disposable genre, and if you end up paying $40 for Raiden and you credit feed in half an hour and then that's the end of it, you feel ripped off or whatever it is. I think over the years, shmup players have been able to articulate a lot of great arguments against this mentality and to explain that yes, the genre may be short in overall game length, but that's not the point. The point isn't to get to the end by credit feeding and then call it a day. The idea is to master the gameplay. The idea is to play for score or to play for some kind of great survival goal. And in that pursuit, you're going to get many hours of great gameplay, and overall could actually last much longer than something like a Splinter Cell or whatever it may be. The thing about this explanation isn't that I don't agree with it, because I have made this explanation myself, is that I think it is actually a little bit incomplete, because there's more to the genre of shmups and their game design than just the fact that they're meant to be played for mastery, because you could also use this to explain many other games, right? For example, you could use this to explain speedrunning, and I think a lot of people use this to explain the appeal of speedrunning, where maybe you want to play more Mario 64 because you just love the game, but it starts to feel empty, right? So you need to provide a reason to master, you need to provide a reason to play, and so speedrunning is very useful for that. Same thing with other games like Ocarina of Time, Super Metroid, all that sort of thing. However, I think the big difference with shmups as compared to speedrunning and compared to many other games and many other genres out there is that I think there's something intrinsic about the game design itself that lends it a unique quality that I'm going to call gameplay density. And I think last night was the point where this concept really came together in my brain, and so maybe if I walk you through my experience yesterday, I'll be able to more fully explain what gameplay density is. And so what happened is, last night I decided to take a little bit of a break. I've been playing shmups a lot, I've been recording a lot. I thought, hey, let's just take a break, let's go through the Steam library, just play some of my mainstream sort of more laid back games, maybe some Bayonetta, some Devil May Cry, Hitman, whatever it is. I'll play through some of these for the night. Maybe I'll make a video about them in the future, maybe not. Just kick back, relax. And so I thought this would be a fun thing that I would do. So what I ended up doing was I went through my Steam library and I spent 3 hours going through my Steam library, opening a game, playing for 10 minutes, getting bored, and then closing it. Opening a game, playing it for 10 minutes, getting bored, and closing this. In fact, it got so bad where I thought, well, maybe I need to buy a new game and just play a new game, because I've played these games over and over and maybe the novelty's wearing off. So I went and I looked at new games, and what I was doing was I was watching the trailer for some of these games and they did look cool, but during the trailers I would sit and I'd get bored watching the actual trailers for the game. So I thought, if I'm getting bored watching the trailer of the game, what is the hope of actually playing the game? Same thing with watching gameplay footage. And so I was like, what is going on here? Why am I having this reaction? And this is something that wasn't just last night. It's something that I've been developing for quite a long time now, where I go to sit down to play some other game and end up just playing a shmup. Beat 'em ups and arcade games, they'll still hold me. Fighting games will still hold me. But if I go to play something like Hitman, and those are games that I enjoy, even Metal Gear now, I'll sit down and play it. There's just certain sections now where I sit down and I think, why does this section exist? What's the point of this? Why does this exist? What's the point of this? And stuff that I think for a long time I sort of just took for granted as being part of games, like this is just how games work. I start to really question now and think, why did they add this? For example, even games that I think are very good about the gameplay density, and I'll get to a more solid definition of what that is. Even games that I think are pretty good about it, like Bayonetta, right, where I sit down and play Bayonetta, I remember there was a whole stage where I was just running, doing this really easy platforming, jumping over things, and that was about it. And I thought, why does this section exist? What's the point of this? And I started to realize what makes shmup game design very unique and makes shmup so appealing is just how dense the gameplay is. And so what I'm calling gameplay density is basically the idea that they are cutting out all of the fat of gaming, and they're getting straight down to what is essentially the conflict, struggle, and payoff. I think that's the cycle of how gaming works as far as the feedback mechanism of what makes gaming entertaining and fun. Is you have your conflict, you have your struggle, you have your payoff, and you do that over and over and over. The thing about a lot of games, mainstream games, is this can be very stretched out over time, where you can spend 10 minutes just traversing, nothing's happening. There's no conflict, there's no struggle, there's no payoff. You're just traversing. And I think this is the idea of like exploratory game design, right? Like open world game design. Well, I'm starting to realize how artificial this style of game design is, and I'm becoming less and less of a fan of it, because what shmups do is they take the game design that you could say, let's say like a Mario level, right? They take a Mario level, and instead of making it 5 minutes long, they take that amount of game design. You know, if you think about Mario, and I do like Mario, but I've been playing it recently, you spend a good amount of time just holding forward. You're not doing anything else but holding forward. What shmups do is they take that game design of that level and they smash it down. What 5 minutes is now 30 seconds. All the same actions, all the same shit that you do in that 5 minutes now takes place in 30 seconds. And then they add in another 30 seconds. And so I think one way to sort of justify shmup game design and shmup value to people who aren't familiar with the genre, because I think this is true, is that they are 8-hour, 10-hour, 15-hour games, but they're just smashed down. And basically, I remember when I was interviewing Aquas, he was talking about this when he was doing a Contra speedrun or something. When you think about it, you could just say shmups are sort of a forced speedrun, because when you go to speedrun Super Mario Bros., when you go to speedrun Contra, whatever it is, you have to scroll at all times. That's how you gain speed, right? You can't ever let go of forward. Same thing with shmups. With the auto-scrolling nature of them, you are always moving forward. The game is always progressing, is always coming at you. There is no fat, there is no downtime. You get these tiny little breaks, at least well-designed shmups. Especially, you know, Cave is really good about this. But overall, you're just conflict, conflict, conflict. So many actions happening all at once. All this gameplay being concentrated down. And so I remember getting a comment not too long ago where someone asked me, aren't you getting sick of shmups? Aren't you getting tired of them? Don't you get bored of them after playing them for hundreds and hundreds of hours? And what's actually funny, at least this is a fact that I've seen among many shmup players, not just myself, is that once you get more and more into the genre of shmups, you would think you would get bored of them, but it's actually the reverse. What shmups end up doing, ruining your enjoyment of other genres, because they're basically like the crack cocaine of gaming. And then you go to like softer stuff, and you're like, this just isn't doing it for me anymore. This isn't hitting me fast enough. This isn't hitting hard enough. And I think that's what the idea of gameplay density is it's taking all the actions that you would do in 5 minutes in another game and compressing it down into these small bits of time and then compounding them over and over and over. And so I was doing a little bit of research, you know, talking to different players and stuff like that. And one that I definitely was interested to talk to was Moglar, because I think Ketsui is a poster child shmup of this sort of game design. The game's actions and all that, its density, as I like to call it, is very, very high. So I talked to Moglar about this, who is on his way at this pace to become the first Westerner to get a world record in the game, which is absolutely insane. And so I was asking him, you know, you have a little readout in the M2 port. It says how long he's played the game. And he was giving me the reading of that, and he said, oh, there's an extra 300 here or so there. So the guy's played about 1,500 hours of Ketsui. And the thing about it is, this isn't like he's been playing 1,500 hours of Ketsui and he's just been holding forward the whole time, or he's just been grinding out these very repetitive runs, because the gameplay density is so high that even if you play that same 30-45 minutes over and over and over, there's so much there. There's so much difference from run to run just on a second by second basis that it is a unique experience every time you play. It is a unique challenge every time you play. And that's what makes shmups so replayable. It isn't just that you play to master them. And this is something that I think I'll talk about in a future video where I talk about comparing shmups to speedrunning. Because the thing about some speedrunning games have this in them. I think partly by design, partly by luck. Something like a Super Metroid, something like Mario 64, where there's so much going on mechanically that they have this real depth to the gameplay. But then there's other games that you speedrun where, I mean, let's be honest, like some of the RPGs where you just menu for 8 hours or whatever. I mean, sure, there's lots of little tricks or whatever, but at the same rate, it's like you're spending a good 4 hours of that time sitting through weird cutscenes or just dead air, right? There's just so much fat. There's so much nothing going on. And I think that's something that I like to call gameplay density. And that's why I think other game genres that I really enjoy, whether they're beat 'em ups, fighting games, run and guns, all these games, you know, all these genres immediately put you in the action. You immediately start playing and you immediately get to that whole cycle of conflict, struggle, payoff, conflict, struggle, payoff. And I think modern gaming has really lost sight of this idea, of this concept of density, because what modern gaming does is it's going for gameplay inflation, where they don't want, what they want to do is they want to inflate the amount of hours that you have to sit through the game. That's a sign of value to people. And that's actually how reviewers review games and assign them value a lot of time. They'll say, oh, it's a 20-hour game, so it's worth your money. Oh, it's a 50-hour game, it's worth your money. They never stop to consider how much of this is inflation. You know, I don't want to get too economic about it, but think about, you know, back in times where inflation was really high. Sure, you could have $500 or whatever it is back then, but I remember, I think, was it post World War I Germany, you could have a barrel of money and it wasn't worth the amount of the barrel. I think that was the old example I was taught in school when we were hearing inflation. Post World War I, their money was basically useless. It wasn't worth the stuff you could carry it in. And I think that's kind of what you're getting to with a lot of the gameplay and stuff in that now, where a lot of these RPGs come out or whatever it is, maybe Cyberpunk, something like that. I haven't played Cyberpunk, but I can't be 100% sure. Metal Gear Solid 5 was kind of like this, and to some degree, where it had a lot of great sections, but then it had a lot of real just fat on the bone, just, you know, throw away this section, cut it down. And now I look back at Metal Gear Solid 5 and I think, man, what if Kojima had this concept in mind? What if he took Metal Gear Solid 5 and just chopped, remove the helicopter flying, remove the part where you have to run around on your horse, remove, cut it down, you know, I guess kind of like the Hemingway approach. And that's what I think makes great game design, especially for shmups, is having very dense gameplay. And so that's something that I'm going to start commenting on when I start doing reviews, and people might be a little bit confused what I am talking about. A game that is very dense and has a lot of richness in every second of gameplay really matters. And so you could take an RPG, the last 20 hours, I guarantee you its amount of gameplay value does not come anywhere near something like Ketsui, which I think is much more along the lines of hundreds and hundreds of hours of gameplay value, and like legitimate gameplay value, because no matter how talented you are, and Moglar is incredibly talented, Jamers I'm sure will agree, you're not just going to master that game in 3 hours. Whereas other games, you could just sit and master them in a very short amount of time, and then you have to sort of make up your own little meta. And I think that's what speedrunning is I think that's one reason why speedrunning has become so popular, is because all these games have these mechanics, but they're not fully there, right? There's not a full reason to continue playing them. I've even ran into this with beat 'em ups like Turtles in Time or whatever, where you can play it for score, but you can just easily find a counter stop milk strategy for that, so there's not a whole lot of reason to do that. The difficulty isn't quite high enough to merit returning over and over. You could do like a no-hit run or something like that. So yeah, that's the idea that I want to get across in this video. I'm very interested to hear what people think about it. I hope you all enjoyed the idea, enjoyed the video, and let me end by thanking my patrons, and adios everyone.
So thank you to 72 PCT Water, Adam Pearson, Adrian Reyes, Ukshay Wadker, Dingo, Handicapped, Anthony A, Ben Wynn, Borge 22, Brian Reboot, Brian Shiver, Corio, Danielle Savage, Delta Tango 6, Disco Star Slayer, Dominic NG, Eric H, Full Set, Retro Schmupper, Geriatric Don Maku, Hausu, Ilya, Kiwi, JLab, JBRPG, Joe Angelo, Gameboy Guru, K, K2, Kikoman 589, Larridge, Malaise, Mark Toms, Maz, Mayher Calendrian, Minong, Queen Charlene, Nathaniel Davis, N Electron, 9, Okla Googles, Philip Mason, Portal 63, RamQ, Raul, Real Skeen, Sketchy Raccoon, The Boot Rex, TRM, Sugumo, Yishi, Plasmo, and Utakaya. Thanks for watching.